When Futurama started in 1999, creators David X. Cohen and Matt Groening had one obvious goal: to pay homage to and satirize the science fiction genre that they loved so much. But when developing the series, the duo pointedly decided that one major science fiction trope was off the table: time travel. That's right, when the series started, Groening and Cohen did not intend to use time travel at all. They even used cryogenics to get Fry from the year 1999 to the year 2999 in the pilot, rather than some sort of time-traveling device. But despite these intentions, the show would eventually start to use time travel, and honestly, some of these turned out to be the best episodes of the entire run. In fact, Futurama won 2 Emmy Awards for Outstanding Animated Series, and both were for time travel-centric episodes. But the forms of time travel varied greatly over the course of the series in really fun ways. So let's go back in time to explore the history of time travel in Futurama.
It all began when I went back in time. Duh.
Even though they chose to avoid time travel early on, physical travel is easier than ever in Futurama. It takes just a few seconds to get to the moon. Wouldn't it be cool if you could move between different countries in mere seconds? Well, with Surfshark VPN, you kind of can. Not physically, but using Surfshark can help you unlock tons of content on streaming services like Netflix by logging in through a different country. So if you've run out of cartoons to watch on the US's Netflix library, no sweat. Try out Australia or Japan. You can find shows like Rick and Morty, Archer, Close Enough, and more. It can also help protect your information from data thieves and secure your online life. On top of all this, one subscription gives you access to Surfshark on unlimited devices, so you can load it up on your PC, phone, tablet, Mac, you name it. Plus, there's a 30-day money-back guarantee, so there's plenty of time to make sure Surfshark is right for you. I've even got a special offer code for you that will get you 83% off and 3 extra months on top of that for free. Just go to the link in the description of this video and enter the promo code CHELLOS to get this awesome offer. All right, let's go back in time. Or forward. The first time we actually witnessed time travel in any sort of Futurama wasn't until season 3 in Time Keeps on Slippin', which at the time sort of circumvented the no time travel rule by showcasing time skips rather than true time travel. In this episode, the Planet Express crew harvests chronotons for the professor to use to create a super team in a basketball game against the Globetrotters. Unfortunately, this causes time to begin skipping forward at random variables. Between the time skips, everybody behaves normally, but nobody can remember what they did during the time skips, which does create for some very funny situations.
'Cause when we're together in here, baby, time will stand still. Ow!
They used this really effectively in the Fry and Leela focused storyline as well, as Fry somehow wins Leela over during a time skip, leading to them getting married. But of course, neither can remember what happened during that time skip, so Leela doesn't actually feel whatever change of heart she had that led to the wedding. And to fix the time skips, they have to implode the nebula from which the chronotons originate, which also happens to destroy exactly what made Leela fall for Fry in the first place. Poor Fry. While I understand the staff's initial reluctance to do time travel stories, this was a pretty great example of how Futurama was able to effectively use a cool sci-fi premise to exacerbate character drama, and for the most part, they really nailed this in future time travel stories. The next one was just a few episodes after Time Keeps on Slippin' in Roswell That Ends Well, the first true time travel story in Futurama, and this one understandably won an Emmy Award for Best Animated Series. Basically, the combination of a supernova's expansion and Fry putting metal in a microwave sends the crew spiraling back in time through a sort of time tunnel. The genius of this episode is that it reveals that the infamous Roswell UFO event of 1947 was actually the Planet Express crew. The spacecraft they recovered was Bender's body, and the alien they captured was...
Hello.
Besides a few flashbacks and Luck of the Fryrish, this is the first real time we saw anything from the past in Futurama, and putting the crew in a fish out of water scenario made for some really funny moments.
Fry's from around this time. I'll talk like him. Yo, Holmes, we're looking for a microwave oven.
But obviously there's one thing that people primarily remember about this episode. Fry accidentally kills his grandfather Enos and then sleeps with his own grandmother, becoming his own grandfather. Hilarious and disgusting. But they also used this development for some other major ongoing aspects of Futurama. It explains Fry's lack of a delta brainwave, which comes into play during the Brain Spawn episodes, The Day the Earth Stood Stupid and The Why of Fry. In order to get back to the future, the crew steals and uses a radar dish that emits microwave radiation to travel back through the hole created by the the supernova before it closes, so their window of opportunity to return was limited. Speaking of the Why of Fry, that's the next episode that features time travel. This episode is in season 4 and serves as a direct sequel to The Day the Earth Stood Stupid, featuring the aforementioned brain spawn. But this one also reveals a major secret that was kept from us the entire series, that Nibbler was in fact the person who called in the pizza delivery on New Year's 1999 and pushed Fry into the freezer tube, sending him into the future. He did this knowing that Fry's lack of a delta brainwave was the only thing that could save the universe from the brain spawn. However, the brain spawn themselves reveal this information to Fry, and then also reveal that the moment Fry was frozen is a nexus point, and that they can actually facilitate Fry's return to that moment in time to change what he pleases, giving Fry an opportunity to stop himself from being frozen. Fry goes back, but ultimately decides that he wants to stay in the future for Leela. He does change one thing though.
Just remember that Scooty Puff Jr. sucks!
So back in the future, Fry escapes the infosphere on his Scooty Puff Sr. and saves the universe. This was the last time we would see time travel in the original Fox era of Futurama, meaning that we really only had 3 out of 72 episodes featuring this concept, and all in different forms too, which is pretty cool. But between the Fox seasons and the straight-to-DVD movies, we actually got one little extra time travel story in the Futurama video game, which was also featured as The Lost Adventure on the Beast with a Billion Backs DVD. In this game, Mom turns the entire Earth into a giant super ship and essentially becomes an unstoppable dictator, to the point where the Planet Express crew needs to now find a way to go back in time to stop it from ever happening. On the planet Bodag, in the literal corner of the universe, the crew meets an alien named Adoy, who has invented something called the Time Tunneler. But before it can send them back in time, it has to be charged by a generator located across a pretty dangerous swamp. The Time Tunneler also has a crank. The only problem is that the crank will only send you back in time exactly as long as you actually turn the crank for, meaning it will just send you back to the moment that you started turning the crank. They actually used this in a really clever video game device though, as Zoidberg needed to traverse the level within 2 minutes.
Once I start cranking, you've got 2 minutes to get to where I can see you. Otherwise, I'll assume you've been killed and rewind time.
That way, if Zoidberg didn't reach the generator in time or died along the way, he would be saved thanks to the time travel. Pretty clever, honestly. When Zoidberg does reach the generator, the crew is able to travel back in time to before the beginning of the game. This time tunnel is pretty much identical to the one we saw in Roswell that ends well. Unfortunately, they actually failed to stop the professor from selling Planet Express to Mom, which was the inciting incident for the entire series of events, meaning the events of this game are locked in a sort of time loop. It's pretty fun though. After this, we arrive at the DVD movies, and the first, Bender's Big Score, is a full-on time travel movie. Now, I don't have time to go over every instance in which time travel occurs in this movie, because that would basically require a full movie recap, but we can talk about the form of time travel. Basically, it stems from an ancient binary code known as the Time Code, which for some reason is tattooed on Fry's ass.
It was bound to be somewhere.
When this binary code is read aloud, we actually see the space entity from the episode Godfellas, which was explained to be likely the remnants of a computerized space probe that collided with God. This God is apparently the keeper of the time sphere, which he sends to Earth when the code is read. The time sphere can then take its user to any location or time in the past, though it cannot go forward in time and cannot return its user to the time they originated. But even more interestingly, this time sphere is apparently a paradox correcting time code. So when a user goes back in time, thus creating a time paradox duplicate of themselves, the duplicate is always doomed to die, as the time sphere is correcting the paradox. The next time travel we see is in the late Philip J. Fry, when the professor invents a time machine that can only travel forwards in time, so that its users can't, quote, go back in time and do something stupid like sleep with their own grandma.
I wouldn't want to do that again.
In this episode, Fry, Bender, and the professor accidentally strand themselves far in the future. They continue to move forwards in time to search for backwards time traveling technology to get them back to their own time. But unfortunately, they're unsuccessful. But in the end, they do discover that time is cyclical, and after the heat death of the universe, a second Big Bang occurs, allowing them to move forward in time back to the moment they left. Twice, actually. And on arrival the second time, they promptly landed on and killed their duplicates. So because they skipped over the second universe, this actually creates a really interesting series of events that has been debated by the smarter fans of the series. I myself am not particularly smart, so I'll explain best I can how these events play out. Essentially, because our time-traveling trio start in Universe 1, then skip over Universe 2, and kill their counterparts in Universe 3, we can assume that the trio from the skipped over Universe 2 would actually do the same exact thing. The events of that universe theoretically would play out the same as they did in Universe 1, meaning they would fly forwards in time, Leela would take over Planet Express, and then eventually leave a message that Fry would read in the year 1 billion. So the trio from Universe 2 would then skip over Universe 3, where our original trio now live. The Universe 2 trio would then land in a theoretical fourth universe, crushing and taking the place of those counterparts. This would mean that no trio from Universe 3 or 4 flung themselves forward in time, and therefore the cycle would likely begin anew with Universe 5, continuing this pattern over and over again. Now, there are plenty of other theories on how and or why these things might play out differently, but like I said, I'm not really smart enough to follow the time travel metaphysics. I don't really understand the implications of Hitler being killed in Universe 2 or Eleanor Roosevelt being killed in Universe 3, but maybe somebody smarter than me can make a video about that sometime. Anyways, let's move on to the next time travel episode, All the President's Heads. Now, this one has probably the most fun type of time travel we've ever seen. It basically explains that this opal substance used to preserve heads in jars creates a sort of time stasis bubble, and the crew discovers that if you drink the juice or lick the head of whoever is in the jar, it will send you back to the time period from which the heads came from, typically for a brief amount of time. Farnsworth then decides to dump all of the opal substance used for head preservation into Washington's jar so that he can go back and prevent his ancestor from being a traitor to the American Revolution. The extra opal used seemingly allowed them to stay in the past for a longer period of time. Unfortunately, while there, Fry alters history, preventing Paul Revere from properly warning of the British invasion, and when the crew returns to the future, everything is very British, though they do eventually go back and return the timeline to normal. The next instance of time travel in Futurama is in Decision 3012, and it actually shows a return of the time sphere from Bender's big score. We learn that Nixon's re-election in 3012 would set off a chain of events that lead to the robot uprising led by Bender, which would also force humanity to live underground. In order to prevent this, a man named Chris Travers is sent back in time to run against Nixon using the time code from Bender's big score, which was rediscovered on a photocopy of Fry's ass.
It was bound to be somewhere.
Travers wins the election, but as he's giving his victory speech, he starts to blink out of existence. It's sort of the Back to the Future rules.
You see, since Nixon wasn't elected, the robot uprising didn't happen, and Travers never got sent back from the future.
Interestingly though, we didn't really see anything like this take place in Bender's big score despite the rampant use of the time code. In that movie, all paradoxes were self-corrected, and we saw these corrections occur on screen. To me, it seems like rather than Travers blinking out of existence, we should have seen something occur that changed the results of the election and or eliminated Travers tangibly. But maybe I'm off base there, maybe there's something I'm missing about it. This also suggests that the robot uprising future is inevitable in Futurama, so if they ever revived the show again, the entire thing would maybe have to take place underground. The last instance of time travel seen in Futurama is in the series finale Meanwhile, where the professor invents a button that sends its user back in time 10 seconds. Fry of course abuses the use of this button and then gets stuck in a loop as he falls to his death from a skyscraper, using the button to reset his fall every 10 seconds. This also introduces the concept of this time shelter that can prevent people within from experiencing the time skips, though there are deadly consequences if they leave the time shelter and the button is pushed within 10 seconds, basically shredding them across the time stream. While Fry is rescued from his fall, he also destroys the time button, freezing the entire universe in place except for Fry and Leela, who live their lives together, frozen in time. In the end, we get one last instance of time travel as the professor returns and modifies the button to take them back before he even conceived of it, eliminating the experience from their existence. And that is the final instance of time travel within Futurama. However, there is one more in the Simpsons Futurama crossover, Simpsorama. In this episode of The Simpsons, Bender is sent to Springfield from the future to kill Homer Simpson, though it isn't made clear how they actually sent Bender in the first place. However, the rest of the crew is able to go to the past through a portal that exits out of Bender's chest compartment into the past. I guess explaining how the time travel works exactly in the crossover wasn't particularly important. We really just wanted to see those characters interact. The whole episode revolves around the Futurama cast trying to kill Homer because of a race of evil zombie bunnies that seem to contain
Simpson DNA evidence.
The bunnies eventually destroy the portal in the future, which then causes the Simpsons and Futurama crew to be sucked back to the future through Bender. After destroying the bunny monsters, they fix the portal, and the Simpsons are then sucked back into Springfield, though Bender has no way to get back to the future, so he has to sleep in the Simpsons' basement and wait 1,000 years to get back. And that's it. So over the course of 140 episodes, one video game, and one crossover event, Futurama used time travel 10 different times and 8 different ways. They got pretty creative with some of their time travel methods too, and ultimately, while not every time travel episode was a winner, a few of them decidedly were, earning the show 2 Emmys and also my heart. Hey, do you like hearing me talk about Futurama and other adult animated cartoons? Well, cool news. I'm starting a podcast with my friend Tariq. You might know him as Toonrific Tariq. The podcast is called Cartoons That Curse. We're going to cover our favorite adult animated comedies in mini-series, one season at a time. First up are the Fox seasons of Futurama, so keep an eye out because we'll be dropping the first episode within the next couple weeks. You can subscribe to our dedicated YouTube channel for the video versions of the podcast, and will be available in audio format on most podcast platforms. Thanks as always for tuning in, like, subscribe, and all that, and I'll see you next time. Peace.
Johnny! Two